Let's look at the event store, because there's some nice changes with this as well. Right here is your limited time bundle, Chico. There's your limited Balana Torres officer, only available for the 5 days during, this little limited run, also for that spend event. Same timer. So if you want this, you're limited to 3. This is essentially 2 for the price of 1, because rare officers normally cost 2,000 currency. So instead of getting 1 shard per pull, you'd be getting 2 shards. So if you're after some Balana Torres shards to try and level her up, because you want to really be able to trigger that hull breach more consistently, here's a way to get a couple extra shards basically for free and get some points for the immediate event that's going on. This will expire. I would expect that they're going to have more of these for the rare officers throughout the month. The other events are kind of interchanged in here. Throwback cosmetics. Hey, here's some nice avatars and stuff. If you have everything else, great. If this is your cup of tea, I don't particularly care at all about cosmetic stuff, avatars and or frames. They don't do anything for you in game. I don't believe in spending currency on them. Resources and materials. This stuff is pretty easy to naturally source through the game. If you're very, very close to an upgrade and you really just can't wait any longer, okay. But realistically, the only thing you should be spending in here on would be at the end of the month, after you've spent all you can and you're like, well, what am I going to do with that last, 1,500, 2,000 currency, whatever I've got? Maybe I'll just cash in something here just to, spend up the rest of my credits. But for the most part, stay out of here. Special currencies. Coal speed, you can source most of them in the artifact building. You can't source all of them. But we'll get to that. This is a death trap. This is a trick. Don't fall for that. As far as other currencies, Syndicate XP is not bad to try and move that along. Some people like the mycelium. Some people like the independent credits, although those are getting easier to source if you get your Talios upgraded. That's really all in here. If you are, needing anything to do research or whatever, I really wouldn't recommend spending on anything else in here. Trade XP, is nice, but again, maybe as a last resort, if you're just looking to cash out the rest of your currency. Frames and avatars, same thing. It's a different. These are throwback ones that were previously not available that they're bringing back out of, dusting them off and putting them back out there with a new price tag on them. UT, thank you very much for the follow. And now we've got our new frames and avatars. Oh, you can get a Borg Maya. Ooh, fancy. New frame. Yeah. They're nice. They look nice. Good job to the art department. Wouldn't spend on them. So what's left? These 4 bundles are primarily where most people are going to spend all of their time and currency, is coming out of these 4 areas. Also, don't forget to finish up the summer hunt. If you have any currency left, you've got 16 hours to do so. So use all that up now while you can. Ship parts. This is a fun one. This one got changed. You've got a lot of stuff in here for the Franklin and the Franklin A. If you only need any of this stuff if you have built a second one, because the first one you get through missions. For the Franklin A, the Fuchsia, the Devore, all that stuff, you get the different interlocks and things that you need as you tier it up as you advance in level through a recurring mission or through a refinery. It's like, hey, you reached this level now, you're now able to get this next tier unlocked, here's your thing. So you don't need to spend any currency on any of this stuff. Definitely don't spend plutonium, dear God. But we have Defiant parts now available in here at a very reasonable price to help upgrade that Defiant a lot faster. This is a big win, and I can certainly see players spending some currency on this to move their Defiant along, because that is a daily drip. And if you really, especially if you got your Defiant later and you haven't been spending a lot of time upgrading it, relatively speaking to your ops level, your Defiant could be significantly behind. So being able to pick up some parts to try and move it up a tier or two to get it closer to where it should be based on your ops level, uh, not a bad way to go. Can definitely get up to be a very useful and powerful ship once it's really tiered up properly. You do get these normally every single day. It is time locked, so all you are doing is speeding things along a little bit, but I think it's still worth it. So the rare parts are also here as well to help speed that along for those couple components that do require rares. Then you have your Spore Drive ones. You've got your Cerritos, Devore that are normally here. You've got your Mantis parts that are we've typically seen in the past. A lot more stuff buried in here. Here's your Fuchsia parts buried in here as well. Static disclaimer, I will always remind people of, for all of these specialty ships, the amount of currency that you get is directly related, typically, to the tier of your ship. So currently my Cerritos, I get 4,600. If your Cerritos is a lower tier than mine, yours might be 4,000, 3,800, whatever the case may be. If you are going to spend currency buying ship parts, don't just buy them all up willy-nilly. Buy enough to finish the current tier that you're on. Spend them, upgrade the tier of your ship, then come back here to the store. The cost, excuse me, the cost will remain the same, but the amount of ship parts that you get will have increased. UT, you heard about me from someone you used to know from work. Well, I'm glad to know. Hopefully he said good things. Glad that you're here and you're able to join us while we're going through some of this stuff. Meme says the Defiant part bundles don't populate if your Defiant is at the max tier for your ops level, so you can't stock up for further interesting. So if your Defiant can't go up any further and you finished all the components that you have, you're not going to see the part bundles because they're not going to let you acquire a surplus, so that way when you move up ops levels, you're sitting on a bunch of stuff. Now you can still do it through your daily claim and stockpile that way, but they're not going to let you do it through the event store. That's interesting. Jetaru, you only get 1,000 Cerritos parts per pull. Yeah. Obviously, as your Cerritos tier, I think mine's tier 9 now, I think. So as you tier that, or maybe even tier 10. So as you tier that ship up, you will see different numbers. That's kind of what I wanted to point out there. Ship blueprints. You do have Defiant blueprints in here. This ship is harder to source, especially if you're in that 35 to 39 range. Otherwise, you should have a reasonable time acquiring it, getting 1 shard per day. This is also available in the Incursions store, so you can get Defiant blueprints that way if you don't want to spend your event store currency on it. But 1,500 per blueprint is pretty cheap, all things considered, when you look at, compared to, say, a Newton, which is 6,700 and has a limit on it. The Defiant's unlimited. You could just buy all 100 and buy the whole ship for 150k. That's not bad value. We got a Vorcha. These are the G5. Again, you're limited. Typically, for the higher level ships, they limit you at like 10% of what it takes to build it for anything G4 and up. If you're working on, again, a bigger ship and you just want to spend a little bit here to try and make that go faster, I'm okay with it. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I can understand wanting to do it. To try and get it, like if you're trying to unlock a pylum and you're like 10 shards or 20 shards away, I can understand wanting to do it, but just remember this is a pretty hefty cost compared to other things in the store that do have better value. Jerry, you're on a server locked at 39, so you're going to be getting the Defiant. That certainly makes sense. If you can't move up, because sourcing it without the bigger uh, solo armada chests and things like that, being able to get the credits is pretty poor from that 35, 36 all the way up to 39. Amber Latera, you have no Defiant parts in your store, so I'm guessing your Defiant is upgraded to where it needs to be. Okay. Yeah, it's a weird little thing that they kind of put in that blocker there. Normally they haven't done that before, but they also haven't had Defiant parts in the store before, so I guess they had to find some way to still make it restrictive because they don't want people running amok with their Defiants. Ship refits. Couple nice things in here. Now, anything up through a G4 uncommon cloaking can be sourced through your faction store. The ones above that, Pilum, Tribune, G5, and things like that, typically are only for sale in the pay store. So if you have one of those bigger ships and you want to pick up cloaking for it, this is an option to do that, although it's going to take pretty much most of your event store currency to do so. Still cheaper than spending, $300 or $400 on it. The gold Cardassian Disruptor is also here. This was something that was given out through a reward 6 to 12 months ago, and a lot of people came close but didn't finish it. Now here's your opportunity to get the 75 shards to finish that up. This was the Deep Space Nine arc at the end of the arc. Actually, I want to go look right now. How far am I from doing that? Projectiles. Cardassian Disruptor. Okay, so I need 18 more. This improves your critical hit damage by 25%. It's a good bonus. It's a good bonus. Anything that boosts critical hit damage will take. So depending on how well you did in cashing these in and choosing what to pick from, I think this was one of the rewards from like the Kira Miles spy event, right? From like November, December, somewhere in that store that you could convert your stuff to. So this will probably be an item worth finishing up for a lot of people. And, the cost on them isn't bad. It's not bad at all. What were we looking at here? They are 3,000 apiece, so I need 18,000 shards, so 54K. That's not too bad. I got 15 just right here on day one. So 3 or 4 days, I'd have enough. Maybe that'll be what I spend on to unlock this, by the end of this little first mini arc. If I feel like I can place in my leaderboard, maybe I'll just sit on them for next month, or next week rather, and try again. The Amalgam refit, if you didn't get that out of the Supreme Choice pack, it's not a bad little bonus either, but this one is very expensive. You can see here 120 chests, 450,000. Is that the actual right math? Because that's another thing that they don't do. So do your math before you hit the button. 3750 times 120 is 450. You would not, well, of course, you guys know this. You've been playing the game for a while. It would not surprise anyone to know that sometimes these do not add up to the correct number. Like, it might cost 450,000 credits to do 120 chests to get you the exact number you need, but this final chest here might say 125 and be like 500k, which is neither, 125 times this or the appropriate number of shards that you need to complete your unlock. You could end up getting extra shards, in which case then they will just sit there in your inventory and you will have wasted currency. So before you do any of these larger pulls, do yourself a favor. Take 5 seconds, pull up a calculator, and click on the button and say, okay, I need 120. Let's make sure these are right. Let's double check their math. because there have been mistakes found before. We got some cloaking refits. Like here's the Pylum cloaking refit. Normally this would cost cash. I think it's $200 or $300 to buy. I would need 80 shards. So basically we're talking about over 400,000 currency again. And a typical event store month, depending on how many tickets and things you've saved from previous months and how you finish on certain leaderboards, if you start with the baseline of about 500,000, assuming you are at least like, we'll say ops 30, I would say 500,000 is at least a good ballpark for where you're probably going to be in. We'll know more about this as the week progresses, where people might start to fall in. If you're under ops 30 or ops 25, there's a good chance there'll be a few events that you might miss out on. You might not have the full range of ticket events, etc., because certain things are just only aimed at a higher level and they don't offer a substitute event sometimes. So your event store currency is going to be less. You also will have fewer options in your store to choose from. For example, if you're under Ops 20, there are no epic officer shards available in your store. You can only choose the rare officers until you get to Ops 20. So there are some interesting things in here to acquire, different cloakings and things like that. But I think the Gold Cardassian Disruptor, for people who have already started this, is a pretty good thing to try and finish up. And even at that's not even enough to do it. So you need 75 shards to unlock it. They gave you a 50 chest bundle, which only gets you halfway there, or 2/3 of the way there. So again, see, not exactly. You'd buy this and think, great, I'm good. But no, because you need 75 to unlock it. So then you got to come over here and click this 5 more times. So it really costs 225, which is the right math, by the way. And finally, we get to our officers. This is the meat and potatoes. This is what everybody typically spends their currency on, or at least a portion of their currency on, trying to unlock and or tier up specific officers that they want. If you came up a little short on the Doctor or maybe Harry Kim or Tom Paris, spending a little bit to get them unlocked, not a bad idea. If there's a specific officer you like their below deck ability, like B'Elanna Torres and her below deck ability of trying to trigger hull breach from a lower deck slot, people are going to be spending quite a bit to boost her up a little bit. Get her tier 3, tier 4, which is really where you need these lower deck officers, because 10% is not a very good proc rate. Tier 2 is only 15%, and tier 3 is only 30%. And 30% is not a very good success rate, especially in this game with the RNG. Tier 4, it jumps to 60%, and I feel like that's going to be the cutoff for her being, or a lot of these officers being reliable to build a crew around. Now, some people were talking earlier this morning about, if you're going to use B'Elanna in armadas, well, just tell everybody to put her below deck in the armada. So then you've got 5 chances at her 10% chance going off, and maybe you'll hit it more often, and it'll help out the whole armada. Instead of wasting a bridge slot on someone like Lorca, you could just tell everybody, put B'Elanna below deck, and we'll just see what happens. That could work if you're coordinated with your alliance and things like that. But if you're going to be doing some hostile grinding yourself, faction grinding, solo armadas, that kind of stuff, you're going to want to get her. Tier 3, I think, is where she can at least be usable, and you'll take your chances. But tier 4 is where you're going to start to feel confident in her ability. Same thing with Harry Kim. If you're looking for that morale boost, tier 4. Damascus, did I miss whether there's a cooldown between pulls or not? I don't believe there's any cooldowns attached to this. The Doctor's another good one. If he's in an officer slot, he's boosting your mitigation. If he's below deck, he's boosting your resource drop. That's typically what most people use him for, is that resource drop. Getting him upgraded, certainly a significant value. It's going to help all of your grinding loops just go that much faster. If you can put him below deck, 5 of 11 as captain with the doctor below deck. Suddenly you're sourcing your materials, whether you're farming ship parts, whether you're farming Hirogen stuff, Eclipse stuff, Mantis stuff. You're getting those currencies faster. He is an incredible time saver, especially for stuff that's gated, like Species 8472 loot, where you only have a limited number of times that you can use the Voyager ability to ping to summon those things in the early stages. If you can get more loot to drop, then you can speed up that loop and move it even faster. Paris is another good officer because he applies mitigation below decks. And this is just at the start of combat. He just boosts all these stats. And he boosts it by defense, which also syncs up with a number of other officers. Especially like in an Armada group with like 6 of 11, who's already boosted, defense. I don't know. 5 of 11 would be with 6 of 11 anyway, but I'm sure there's other officers that Dax, I think, might also trigger off of defense. One of her abilities. So if you're trying to run some solo armadas and you're splitting up crews and things like that and you need some extra mitigation, Tom Paris, not so bad for that. Bev Crusher, I think. Yes, thank you, Lloydson. Brain Soul, there is no cooldown. You went all the way to tier 5 Harry Kim already? Okay. Thank you for letting us know. Yeah, the epic officers are 6,000 apiece, so they are going to be more expensive to acquire. I'm 50 shards away. 300,000 loot. What's the doctor's next tier? Let's go look and see if that's even, what would that be worth to me? Because I'm certainly, might be on a preliminary list of things that I'm interested in. But he might also be someone who's just too expensive. I'm thinking like, do I want to upgrade the doctor 1 tier, or do I want to get B'Elanna Torres up 2 tiers? Tier 2 for the doctor, so he starts at 15%, then he goes to 20, 30, 35, and then maxes out at 50%. So spending a lot of loot to get him up to tier 2 only moves this from 15 to 20%. It's not a big increase. Maybe if there's some other ways to source doctor shards throughout, I might consider it, or if I get lucky with some of my Armada pulls, because that is another thing to consider when you're thinking about upgrading Voyager officers. Now over here in your artifacts gallery, for killing the rare armadas, you will get these nanotechs which you can now cash in here in the store. I don't know the drop rates. I'm sure Blue and Jules will have a chart out based on the level of the armada, what the different setters chests and stuff are going to be, probably by the end of the week as they compile all that data. You have all of the officers from the first 3 months of the arc are available in here. There's no info button, so there's nothing to show. I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you that a full unlock, as you're seeing along the top row, is probably less than 1%, like 0.1%. And these half unlocks here are probably about 1% chance. So realistically, what you're looking at here is most likely 5 shards being a reasonable pull, maybe like a 10% chance of getting 5 shards apiece. And then most of the time you're going to get 2 or 1. This is very similar to the payouts of the Strange New Worlds in the Mantis refinery and how these officers look over here, where you've got a full unlock and then a chunk of shards and then a smaller chunk. And as people can share their experiences of having pulled these are very rare, and even these are very, very, very uncommon. You thank your lucky stars if you hit a 10 or 20. A lot of times you just get 5 and you're like, oh, that was a good one. These are decent pull rates. 5s and 1s. These are what you're going to get most often. So if you're looking at that same thing over here in your artifacts. And again, the sourcing for these materials is going to be tied to the rare armadas, which are a lot harder to do. Because the sourcing for the directives is so much slower because they're in the 7-day chests, and apparently it's not even a full unlock. You'll come over here, you'll get a currency, these unicomplex techs, which you're supposed to get out of your 7-day chests, which are currently broken. From what they've made it sound like, your 7-day chests will not have enough to do a box claim. You're supposed to be able to do one formation armada every 2 weeks, is how it was disclosed this morning. So that would be 50 of these per week. So every other week you can come in here and do a claim. Now, whatever you get out of these formation armada boxes, I don't know. But then you're going to come over here and you're going to do this. Don't know if this has a cooldown on it. 24 hours, 22 hours, 3 days. Like the artifact galleries, I don't know. That'll be something else. We'll just have to wait and see. Will Tuvok work on rare formation? No. Tuvok only boosts the artifact tokens. Tuvok only boosts the artifact tokens that you get. These nanotech exchanges are not the artifact tokens. Tuvok's only helping you get more of these for this thing. This is a different currency Tuvok will not interact with at all. So save yourself an officer slot, because he ain't going to help you. Well, to some degree. He won't help you with the rare currency. You're right, Silvis. Because the rare armadas will have the original currency plus the new currency. So he'll help you with half of it. But he's not going to help you with the part you want him to help you with. Let me make that clear. The part you really want is more of the rare things, so you can do more of the conversions to get the Voyager officer crew. And that he is not improving your drop rate on. But thank you guys for clarifying that and pointing that out in the chat, so I clarified that. All right. I think that's it for like event store and currencies and cash-ins. Anybody else have any questions about that kind of stuff? Obviously lots of good officers in here. You can pick and choose your favorite. Again, if you're talking about, getting 500K, maybe 600,000 if if your alliance is one of the top 5 alliances and you're placing higher on those leaderboards, or if you have a lot of ticket events saved up because maybe you didn't run, you just banked the tickets from last month and said, I want some extra events to roll, through. How many do I have? Because I know I didn't run a lot of ticket events last month. Where are my event tickets? I've got 75 sitting there. I don't know how I have 5 tickets. I don't know what they gave out when that I have 5 tickets from something, but I do have a few saved up here, so I will be able to get a couple extra ticket events done this month to get a little more event store currency. That might turn into a few extra officer shards. I don't think Lube's going to get too jealous. Taj, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome on in. Maybe there was something. I know there were some weird things one month. That's true. There was a weird thing where, they had regular events and then they had rare events, and the rare events cost a different number of tickets, but there was a converter. So maybe that was it. Maybe it was a comp chest that they just gave everybody a weird number one day. I don't know. There's been so many weird things that have happened over the last 3 years that it's just hard to keep track at this point. It really is.